Oh, hello, everyone. Hello, hello. It's Lisa Graves. I'm here with Greg Olear, and we are here for the 5, 8.5. You know the routine. Welcome. This is your midweek break, and it's 5 stories, 8 minutes each, and a chance to refuel. We slow things down to sip, reflect, and remember. You are not alone. And tonight, we've got the amazing, wonderful Greg, the producer, one of the co-producers of this show. Nadine is traveling. And so Greg and I are going to have, I hope, one hell of a conversation, given the fact that we're in one hell of a mess. Yeah, how are you doing, Greg?
I'm pretty good. Thank you for having me on, on your show. Shout out to Nadine, wherever she is. I think I might know where she is, but also I hooked this up with my Substack and it appears to be working. So
exciting.
Shout out to the Substack people. I think if you click some button, you could do it too. I don't know. We have a guest tonight and she's here. I see her in the green room. Perceptive people can see her book behind me. And figure out who it is. And that's all I got. But otherwise, I mean, it's been such a strange week, like I feel like the heaviness of everything kind of hit me this week.
Yeah, I was thinking that I made a mistake in saying, how are you? Because I've been trying to say, how are you is probably not the optimal conversation starter nowadays versus just, hey, it's great to see you. I am so glad to see you. I'm glad that we are still here and, trying to shine a light on all this darkness, this madness.
It's great to see you. I'm so glad we're here. It's time to shine the light on on all the darkness
speaking
and
of
the madness.
Yeah. I mean, I was in my office doing some work, and my sweet husband came in and he said, "Are you listening to this Bondi hearing?" I had lost track of time, so I missed the beginning of it. I tuned in just in time to hear her just outlandish, obnoxious, outrageous, insulting invective. It was really quite the performance for Donald Trump, for the audience of one. And it was utterly, like, she was the embodiment of contempt. Like, her words, her tone, her presence was just utterly contemptuous. It made me wish that she could be held in contempt, because she certainly was full of contempt and full of some other things. I would call them lies, deceit, deception, misinformation, disinformation, accusations, false accusations. There was a whole package, and not in a good way.
I saw some of the clips where Schiff was asking her questions, and she doesn't answer the questions like at all. And he made the point that this is supposed to be an oversight hearing. What are we doing here? You're supposed to answer questions and he actually said something about the guy that got 50 grand in a bag.
Yes,
that works for the administration.
Yes.
I forgot about that. Like, there's so much, like, Teapot Dome, right?
Yeah.
What was his name? Fall during the Harding administration. Yes. He got some kickback so that somebody could build something at Teapot Dome.
Yes.
So that basically he got 50 grand in a bag, and that brought down an entire administration. Now it happened. What had happened last week? I don't even remember.
Right. It's recent revelations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we are. But the thing about Bondi. Now, we were talking before. Do you think that she believes this? Because just listening to her talk, she seems like somebody who kind of, has drunk the Kool-Aid. It reminded me of Ginny Thomas's text messages and stuff a little bit. Like, just they think the barges are coming off Gitmo, and there's weird, even though you're the Attorney General of the United States, you could probably figure out what's actually happening better than like I could. But she seems not to care. Like, Trump, has this daily briefing, but he would rather watch Fox News, which seems crazy to me. But do you think that she is for real? Do you think that she is a true believer, or do you think she's just lying?
Well, I have 100% confidence that you would do a better job than her as Attorney General of the United States, Greg. In fact, at one point, there was this Scalia opinion about nude dancing And he made, this was basically my only favorite Antonin Scalia line, where he said that 9 people picked at random out of I think it was the Kansas City phone book could do a better job than the Supreme Court. And I was like, yes, bingo. And I'm pretty sure that 9 people picked at random out of the whole United States could do a better job than Pam Bondi, and would perform the duties of the office with more dignity and more devotion to the rule of law. Does she believe it? I think that she put on a performance at the Judiciary Committee that was designed to be an attack. And interestingly, it's like she's paging through this book. Where's the Oppo research that the taxpayers paid for from, or was given to them by someone to attack members of the Judiciary Committee, often with claims that weren't true, saying that a member, because they appeared at a protest, they're somehow hanging out with Antifa, when that's not a real thing. It doesn't exist. The fact that the idea she would attack a sitting senator, it was McCarthy-esque. It was garbage. Yeah. And her attacks on Senator Whitehouse, again, unfounded. Her pushback against Senator Schiff, unfounded. It was really appalling to see someone in that role, that important role of the chief law enforcement officer in the United States in terms of the Justice Department, just saying things that were reckless and, not tethered to actual documented facts, but that some line that some Oppo researcher or some operative really had basically fed to her that she was looking for. What's my response here? It was not an impressive performance. Does she believe it? I don't know. I mean, she's certainly been a right winger for a long time, but she also is someone who accepted money from Donald Trump.
A lot of money. When
she was the Attorney General of Florida and was supposed to be investigating the absolute sham fraud that was Trump University. No doubt that it was basically, swindling people, snookering people out of their cash for a degree that would mean basically almost nothing, if not less than nothing. And then drop those charges. So, what does she believe? What is she willing to do for power, for access to power? I don't know. And I've had a sort of a similar conversation around other issues where someone will say, oh, but that person sincerely believes that. And I will say, hey, sincerely wanting to take away my rights doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
I don't care how sincere you are, sincere in your endeavor to basically trample people's fundamental rights doesn't make it okay. So, but the other thing about Bondi, I think it's important not just to think of her in the context of yet another person who was formerly paid as a defense attorney for Trump, being paid by us to basically act like a defense attorney for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of comparison to me is, at one point I realized that Kellyanne Conway was a lawyer. I thought she was a comms person because she had made her name in polling, and I hadn't looked into her, really before she became the first woman who, helmed a major presidential campaign. And then after the election, she was appointed to the White House counsel's office as a counselor to Trump. And I was like, oh, wait, she's a lawyer. Oh, she's just advocating zealously for her client. She's just saying whatever needs to be said to deflect from the responsibility of her client. Not that that's necessarily a good thing in the sense of us, the taxpayers, paying for that. But if you think of it as, this is someone who is the Attorney General, but who really is using the powers of the Attorney General to serve the President of the United States, to appeal to him, to praise him, to protect him. And she'll say anything basically to attack anyone who dares to hold him accountable. It makes perfect sense. It doesn't make it right, but it makes sense.
Right. I just want to add that she took money for her campaign in Florida to get rid of it seemed like she took the 25 grand and then made the Trump U go away. But she was also given a lot of shares in Trump's media company, which she later sold for, I believe, you can check me if I'm wrong here, $8 million, effectively pre-bribing her before she became Attorney General. So the whole thing, the idea that she's going to ever be somebody
independent of him.
Yeah. Her livelihood depends on him, literally.
Yeah.
And I don't. And you're right. It doesn't matter what she believes, if she's sincere or not sincere. She's doing the fascist overlord's bidding, and she continues to deflect all the questions about Epstein, which,
Yes.
White House, God bless him, asked. And I think
Yep.
people have to keep asking in graphic terms. I think is
Yep.
a good idea too.
Yep.
Get
Yep.
those
And
images
Senator
up.
Blumenthal also asked questions. I mean, the questions that the Democratic senators were unfazed by her,
Yeah.
obstreperous obnoxiousness. And those questions have to be asked. And even though she's not going to answer, they still have to be asked. They go into the record. The public sees her non-answer, sees her dodging.
Yes.
That's important for the historical record, for people to understand what's going on here with this attorney general. And I had this one where I thought, is she better than Matt Gaetz? Or is just this another version of the same thing? I mean, he was awful, no doubt about it. But she, I've watched a number of her appearances, for example, on Fox, and I am appalled at how she has politicized the office of the attorney general, not just in these prosecutions of Trump's enemies, but attacking prosecutors for being so-called progressive prosecutors. Most prosecutors aren't progressive at all. They are. I suspect if you ever knew how they voted, it would be probably predominantly Republican. But the idea that you're a quote progressive prosecutor, like, that's not a thing. What is a thing is that in our country, we have people who run for office and are elected to office on partisan tickets to be prosecutors. And sometimes Republicans win and sometimes Democrats win. And at the end of the day, they're all prosecuting people who committed crimes. That's what the prosecutors do. So the idea that there's some sort of lefty, conspiracy out there among prosecutors, it's another part of the BS campaign that she is spearheading. And when she goes on the news and attacks these prosecutors in that way, it really shows her partisanship, that she would even politicize that. Of course, that's not new. Politicizing crime is a longstanding tactic, and playing into sort of playing racial dog whistles is a longstanding part of the Republican Party's tactic on that, as we know from the Willie Horton ads, against Dukakis and more. It goes on and on and on. But it is shocking to the senses to see the Attorney General of the United States behaving the way she does, with the tenor she deploys in response, as you said, Greg, to the legitimate oversight of a co-equal branch of government who has responsibility for deciding, passing the laws that she is supposed to enforce, or giving her the budget to do so. And if we were in any other world but this twisted, messed up world, she might have some humility in response to Congress, this Congress that might, take away some of their budget if it were a different Congress, or might change some of the laws that she, seems intent on misusing, or that she could be held in contempt of Congress, or that she could be held to account in some future tribunal. But instead, she acts as though she has impunity. Like, if she does something that is wrong, Trump will pardon her.
Which he will.
I wonder where she got that idea.
I don't know. It's a crazy idea. So, okay. I can't set the timer because I have the Substack thing going on my phone.
Oh, okay. I got a timer.
It's fine. So we should move on to the next topic. And I want to show everybody this. I hopefully this will work. Because Stephen Miller went on CNN and glitched. Let's see if this works here. I got to go here, I think, and then
legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize.
That's, I mean, that's.
I'd only seen the quote. I hadn't seen the clip. So thank you for.
No, the clip is because people need to see the clip because you have to see this wasn't a situation where he was the comms were off or anything like that. Clearly, he said something that he wasn't supposed to say, and he stopped himself and kind of relied on CNN to screw it up. And then apparently, what happened is that was the live feed, but when they went back and replayed it, they edited out where he said plenary authority. So what is plenary authority? Why is this such a big deal that he said those words?
Well, okay, so this is an assertion that has been made occasionally, but really prominently in this administration, that that the president has plenary, quote, plenary power. That actually doesn't appear in the Constitution. Another thing that is not in the Constitution. Of course, Stephen Miller didn't go to law school, just plays a lawyer, I guess, on TV or something. But plenary authority, the definition of that is absolute authority, unlimited power, no limitations on that power. And that is not something that a president has. Even, even in the context of being the commander in chief of the military, there's still a code of conduct for the United States military. There's still rules that the United States not only signed on to, but helped write about the conduct of troops in war, if we were actually at war with a foreign enemy. There are international agreements about the use of nuclear weapons or neutron weapons or chemical weapons or germ warfare. Like there's an array of rules that are supposed to govern the actions of the United States and of the President of the United States. And he does not have absolute power to commit, to order troops, for example, to commit war crimes. He does not, no matter what he said at that convening of the generals. It's not a power that the Constitution commits to the commander-in-chief. That's different than the concept of deciding where to send a tank in a foreign country as part of hostilities in a war that Congress has declared or that Congress has funded. And so I think you're right. I think he realized that he probably should not assert that it is their view that he has absolute and unlimited power within the United States of America to send troops into cities. And yet, which we'll talk about a little bit later, we've seen that happening in the form of ICE in Chicago and elsewhere. But plenary authority is not something that this Constitution provides. And even with John Roberts' outrageous and destructive ruling last year to give Donald Trump immunity from criminal prosecution, that's not the same as saying the president has plenary power, absolute power to do whatever he wants. That is what that phrasing is really, akin to what you see in the actual Declaration of Independence, which conservatives or Republicans used to claim to embrace as the most important founding document, because it describes a king acting without regard to the law, acting as if he has king-like absolute power, the power of a monarchy. And America, no matter kind of how bad some of the polling is in terms of some people sticking to this monarchist in the White House, most Americans don't want a king, didn't vote for a king, would vote a king out.
Yeah, they did vote for the king, but I think I'm just going to have to push back there, Lisa, because I think you're wrong. Because I think, I don't know, it's pretty clear in Title 10 of the Code 10 of the Code. I think I'm gonna use that from now on. Whenever I'm gonna be like, it's your turn to do the dishwasher, because it clearly states in Section 10 of the Code that's what happens. I don't like the way he says circuit. He goes circuit. It's like a weird robot. He does not have a good voice. I think he thinks he has a good voice. Stephen Miller, he does not have a good voice.
I mean, the idea of what is like this idea of invoking the Insurrection Act also, even though there are flaws with the Insurrection Act, and that's why a lot of lawyers called for it to be reformed before Trump returned to office. But it doesn't mean that a president can just declare, an incident outside an ICE facility to be an insurrection. Like, that's not what an insurrection is. But we do know what an insurrection is. We saw one with our own eyes on January 6th, and we saw the insurrectionist in chief later pardon those people who were engaged in attacking our Capitol and trying to stop our votes from being counted through the Electoral College vote. That's an insurrection. That type, there's nothing akin to what happened on January 6th at our Capitol happening in any city in the country. And to the extent that there are people wielding weapons, it's ICE. That the firing, the firing of the rubber bullet at the priest, from 30 feet away from on high.
And then the tear gas, right?
Tear gassing. And then obviously what's been happening in Chicago in the dark of night. I mean, there is violence being committed, but it's being committed by the Trump administration.
Yeah. Everything's upside down and topsy-turvy. I feel like, this is the thing. Like, I didn't go to law school, so I don't know, but it seems to me that the whole idea and structure of the Constitution is that it's checks and balances where there's three branches of government and they're all equal. So, pardon my French, how the fuck does somebody get off being like, they're all equal, all three branches, except for this one, which has supreme power? Like, no, dumbass, that's not how this works. But I don't know, far be it from me to say. Perhaps our guest can shine some light on this. She is, after all, a professor of history at the University of Connecticut and the author of one of my favorite books, The Rise and Fall of the Second American Republic. Manisha Sinha, welcome. How are you? You're on mute. Okay, now you're not.
I unmuted myself. I figured this out. Thanks for having me again, Greg. I seem to be a regular on your shows.
we always good to see you. Always good to see you.
Yeah.
It's nice to meet you. I'm so glad you're on the show. Thanks for coming on.
It's really good to meet you, Lisa. And it's bad times, so it's good to meet and speak with like-minded people.
Yeah. No. So what's your before we get into questions or anything, what's been on your mind lately? You're looking at all this, you're paying attention. What do you want to get off your chest? What do you want people? What's the number one thing you want people to know?
I am so upset with people who say, oh, this is not fascism. Oh, this is not that bad. Oh, we'll just get through it. And who think that this is like the new normal. And, I, as a historian who has seen some really dark periods in American history and written about them, as you mentioned, this is not a good path to be going down. And, personally, I feel threatened because I have two sons who are, brown young men in Chicago. And, if these people go after them, then as I wrote recently in a post, hell had no fury as a mother provoked. So it's really, we reached that point where citizenship is being defined arbitrarily. But as you were talking earlier, the presidency, this theory that they have of executive unitary authority and, the plenary power of the executive, they are abusing that in a way that is even unprecedented for the 20th century imperial presidency. And, you're right, no checks and balances. It's as if the rule of law and our constitutional order does not exist. So, yep, as you write in your show, maybe we are witnessing what I call the fall of the Third American Republic. Jamil Bowie in the New York Times recently used my notion of different republics in American history, and he called it the fall of the Fourth Republic because he saw the third emerging with the New Deal and the fourth with the Civil Rights Movement. But I actually think we are in the Third Republic, born during the New Deal, the administrative state, the modern state, the social state, and democratic governance. And that was extended with the civil rights movement when we got rid of racial qualifications for citizenship. So that, I think, was the Third Republic. That's the modern American Republic. It's our modern interracial democracy that we all took for granted and thought, we are going to be living in this for the rest of our lives. And what we are seeing by the Trump regime, and it is a regime, not an administration, they are actually dismantling all the achievements of the New Deal state, but also of the civil rights movement. And so, very fraught times. That's all I can say. And I don't want to sound like the voice of doom. I don't think anything is inevitable, but I think the only thing that's going to stop this man and his regime of rogue people like Bondi, like Miller, like Patel, all of them, is massive resistance against what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go
it
ahead,
really
Lisa.
is. It's really extraordinary to be living in these times, and like you say, Manisha, to see the normalization of it and see some of the major outlets normalize it in some ways. Take his assertions as president is merely is claiming X when it's never been claimed before, or certainly not in the modern era. Some of these types of claims, and they've been rejected, like this impoundment theory. This notion that a president can just take whatever cash Congress allocates and keep it, impound it, and then just deploy it as he wishes. I was talking with one of my friends the other day about this, and we were discussing the fact that when Richard Nixon was president and wanted to do just that, Bill Rehnquist, who was no shy flower, who basically put an potential executive order on Nixon's desk to allow him to declare martial law in response to the May Day protests. He didn't. Instead, he ordered people to be basically beaten that day. Didn't declare martial law. But Bill Rehnquist, who basically tried to rationalize almost anything Nixon wanted, said, yeah, but you can't impound the money because the Constitution plainly says that Congress has the power of the purse. And the budget isn't just a theory like you wrote on the back of your checkbook. It's an actual law passed by Congress and signed by the president. You cannot impound the cash. And here we are, 50, almost 60 years later, basically, with Trump surrounding himself with people who are basically saying, yeah, you can, because we said so, because we've decided theoretically to hell with Congress. We can do whatever we want, which I think also, makes these budget negotiations where we're in this shutdown, situation, which is causing so much disruption in people's lives. How do you negotiate over an agreement on the budget when you have a White House basically saying, whatever you decide, we'll just ignore whatever we don't like anyway, because we're not bound by the law. I wonder, I was thinking, Manisha, I haven't read your book. I am going to read your book. It's on my list now, but I wonder about that period you talk about in the Second Republic, and the what were then the radical Republicans who were determined to redress the sort of sins of the nation that resulted in the Civil War, and fought like hell against a Supreme Court that was trying to block those civil rights amendments. They had to push them into constitutional amendments to secure them over the objections of an aggressive Supreme Court. And then after all of that work, you had the Hayes-Tilden betrayal and the repeal, in essence, of all the promises of an equal society that had led to Black Americans being elected to Congress for the first time ever. The white supremacists stamped that out. So I wonder if you see parallels in the progress from the 1964-65 to now, this reaction that seems much delayed but still a reaction, compared with what was happening in the late 1860s, 70s, 80s, 90s, like 130 years ago, 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's a great question, and history doesn't exactly repeat itself, even though that's a fond saying that people have, but our present is certainly informed with what has happened in the past. And what one sees during Reconstruction actually is also a rogue president like Trump, And I wrote a couple of comparisons between him, Andrew Johnson, and Trump, and they sort of share crude racism and generally their ignorance and complete disinterest in being informed. They share that with each other. But at that time, Congress, as you said, was controlled by radical Republicans who read Johnson out and his administration out, and they managed to replace him with Ulysses Grant, the sort of conquering Union general of the Civil War. And they're able to achieve all these things that you mentioned, the first federal civil rights laws ever in American history, a civil rights law that actually banned segregation before the rise of Jim Crow, but which the Supreme Court, of course, declared unconstitutional later on, and these Reconstruction constitutional amendments. But I do think that that is like a pivotal moment in US history, because for the first time you have this sort of civic conception of American citizenship, regardless of race, color, and previous condition of servitude, which is the exact wording of these amendments. And those are the amendments that Trump and his acolytes are going after. Like, they hate the 14th Amendment. And, he has, forget the fact that, the power of the purse belongs to the House of Representatives, clearly stated in the Constitution. He's withholding funds. He's stopping projects in blue states, weaponizing all this. Is all unconstitutional. I mean, the gall, the enormity of it. And you can see some federal judges, even those appointed by him and by Republican presidents, being appalled by this. But our Supreme Court consists of people like Alito and Thomas, Alito, who likes to refer to medieval law rather than our Constitution. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, so we are really at a stage where Trump has, he's just like behaving with impunity. And it's not just that, but he thinks he can overturn birthright citizenship of a constitutional amendment. He said that I
Yep.
can do that as an executive order in his first term, and everyone laughed at him because they said, what an idiot. But that's what he's going to do. Even this notion of floating a third term, because my 2 terms are not consecutive, so the constitutional bar doesn't apply to me. They come up with every, they can spin thing anyway. And it's really a question of when they're accused of something, they just throw it back and say, oh, we're not weaponizing it, but Biden already did this. And they confuse the matters, and they have these echo chambers with Fox News, etc. And that unregenerate 30% of the population and the unregenerate Republican Party that just goes along with him. So that's what's different. At that time, Congress stepped up. And during Nixon, as you pointed out, not just people like Rehnquist, but members of his own party told him, you better go. But that's not happening today. They're all kowtowing to Trump. So it's really much worse, I think, in a way, for us, because what's the remedy for that? And now he is stoking a war between the states.
That's
He wants to reverse the Civil War by starting a civil war against the blue states. If you're going to send Texas National Guards to Illinois, what are you doing? You are starting a war between the states, and it's really dangerous. Everything he does, so racial division, he is an agent of chaos, disregard the Constitution. So, as Greg was saying earlier on, there's so much that you sometimes forget. Like, you forget this missing 50K given to Tom. Apparently, they don't know where it is. Apparently, Tom Homan just made out with it like a robber, like a bandit. And that's what Trump does. His regime is like shaking down countries, shaking down, law firms, educational institutions. He behaves like a mafia boss. So, criminality also is the modus operandi. And I think what's similar, perhaps, with the fall of Reconstruction is the white supremacist rhetoric, the racism, the pure racism, the complete corruption of the Gilded Age robber barons. The good old days when we had no regulations and there was lead in our water, and things like that, or and it waits. aggressive than the Reconstruction. They're trying to undo the first American Republic.
Yeah.
You know, we are not a monarchy. Even those founding fathers, and some of them enslavers, when they founded the republic, they had a certain idea of American republicanism. We're going back on that too.
Yeah.
So I really don't know what is it. I mean, maybe we'll go back to Imperial Rome. I don't know. That's what the fascists loved, right? Mussolini
Yeah.
and the Nazis.
Speaking of lead in the water, the Imperial Rome. But I was thinking ominously, because you were coming on thinking about the Civil War. You mentioned the war between the states. Are we already there? It feels like this is already kind of a soft Civil War, and people haven't quite realized it yet. I mean, I think that, sending the Texas National Guard to Illinois, and my understanding is that that's only legal because Trump federalized them and Texas said it was okay. If Illinois calls up the National Guard to be like, don't let them in, we're there, right? And why aren't they doing that? It feels like we're very close to this. And we're also, I think, very close to one of the ways out of this is to just, for the northeastern states and California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, to just be like, we're out, we're done. You're broke. You're the states with the least amount of money. Enjoy. We're done. Go have your little trad wife, Leonard Leo Rust vote fantasy. And we're good over here in New York and California, and enjoy Mississippi, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. But the real question is, are we there? Do you think? Is it already happening?
Well, it's definitely, I think, something that he is trying to provoke. And I don't think it's just going to be sort of Texas versus Illinois. What he's trying to provoke is violence to an extent. Like, ICE is making fake 911 calls to Chicago PD. They're provoking violence by aiming their guns and tear gases at peaceful protesters. So they're trying to provoke a violent situation. I think that whole little charade that they had with all the generals there is to say the ultimate game is to send in the U.S. military to these states. So, like, literally the polar opposite of what happened during the Civil War, when the U.S. Army marched into the Confederacy, what are today the red states, mostly, and undid secession of Southern, the slaveholders' rebellion. I think he is trying to provoke that situation to control these states in a way, like maybe even have military rule, maybe even prevent them from voting. I don't know what his plans are, because he's so crazy that he thinks he can just do all this, and that is kind of frightening. But the one thing with Trump I've noticed is that if you push back hard enough, like a typical bully, he tends to fold a little. So that's our only hope. And not push back violently, but these protests, I think, are really important. The news doesn't report them.
No, they don't.
I was seeing that in mainstream news. It's as if it's not happening. But you go onto social media and you see these pictures, and you see a minister being tear gassed. You see, a woman being thrown to the ground brutally and all that. And it's amazing to me that the American press doesn't report it. And my husband, who follows the European press, is reporting it. So there'll be an article in The Guardian or in Der Spiegel in Germany that is reporting all this. It's not making it to American news. So, I mean, I think they I don't know whether people are shaken awake or whatever, but that's what he's doing. I think he wants to actually go beyond federalizing states, red states, national guards. He wants to have a pretext to just send in the federal troops. It's what he told Milley he wanted to do during the George Floyd. And so that's his game plan. And there's no one to stop him. Now, will the U.S. military be politicized like that? I mean, just watching those stone-faced generals and admirals while Hegseth and he ranted like, I don't know, a juvenile schoolboy, or even worse, I'm not sure whether they will stand up and say, you may be wondering, but this is an unconstitutional order. That's what has been established by international law, Nuremberg, And Lincoln's code of law of war during the Civil War, where the Union Army was not allowed to attack Southern civilians, where even Sherman, whom
Yep.
Southerners bemoaning today, he attacked property. He didn't attack
Yep.
people. He didn't go around massacring people. He
Yeah.
destroyed property. And so I wonder that whether Trump's game plan is that. I don't have any favorites, but I must say with the Democratic Party, the only people who seem to be showing that kind of resistance are Democratic governors. It's Newsom, it's Pritzker, maybe to a lesser extent, Hochul and others. Tim Walz, of course, occasionally tweets about these things. So, there are the Democratic governors, our congressional leadership, I think, has been very disappointing. But with this government shutdown, we've got to figure out, how that's going to play out with them. But that state level resistance really reminds me of the 1850s, actually the time, Lisa, before the Civil War, when they sent slave catchers and federal marshals in states, especially Massachusetts, and the state governments and local governments simply resisted.
That's right. That's right. And people like Henry David Thoreau and, helped in Massachusetts to alert people to the slave catchers. And, and of course, we had Harriet Tubman and other people valiantly leading people to freedom. And of course, that's the history that this administration wants to erase.
It does remind me of that. And I wrote a book on abolition, and it reminds me of those vigilance committees and the anti-manhunting league.
Yep.
They made those organizations. It was the abolitionists, basically black and white, who did that. Thoreau, tradition of civil disobedience, not paying your taxes to the federal government. Will we reach those levels of resistance? And by the way, in the 1850s, Southern slaveholders controlled the federal government. Throughout that decade, it was a decade. So abolitionists had to be very inventive in how they were going to resist that. And it was a multi-pronged strategy. It was in the courts, it was on the streets, it was, of course, through print culture and disseminating their arguments, etc. And I think we are at that stage. We have to do that.
Yeah. I just want to take that one of the points you made of the many really incisive points you've made, Manisha, but this question of why is it not on the headline and front page above the fold on every newspaper and the lead of every TV show, what happened in Chicago with the landing on the apartment building and the dragging people out of their beds and the zip tying of children and adults who were accused of no crimes, where there was no warrant, where there was no probable cause. Why has that not just been on every paper, every newscast until it stops?
I think there are a lot of Americans who refuse to believe that this can happen here. And they don't,
they don't see it, right?
With the enormity of it. Like with the civil rights movement, these images were all over television. Now we have these billionaires who own media companies who are striking their deals with the Trump regime, censoring the news, censoring endorsements. I mean, in a way, we have a less free press than we had even in the 1960s or even in the 1850s. And people are just lulled into this sort of thing. And we have these tech bros, of course, who are manipulating algorithms. Like, remember that Cracker Barrel thing?
Yeah.
That was all fake. It was like all these bots who were outraged about the crack. And then it became an issue. It's like the immigrants eating their cats and dogs and all this nonsense. And you wonder, how ignorant and how racist are people that they will buy into all this, and maybe it's just being done against these illegal immigrants who are somehow criminal, who are somehow non-white, and therefore not truly American. And it's a whole lot of things going on together, and I think there should be outrage. My husband's from Germany, and when he sees these things, he just kind of yells, and I'm like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Something disastrous," and he's like, it's that Nazi Barbie that he calls Pam Bondi. Did you see the way she acted and the way she talked? Or he will say it's the Gestapo. He calls ICE. I mean, he has
It is
very
a Gestapo. That's exactly what it is. It's not even
I mean,
an
the fact
exaggeration.
that the budget for ICE is bigger than the budget for the United States Marine Corps.
exactly.
It's
I mean,
it's a state secret police that goes around anonymously and throws American citizens in vans. It's that's the Gestapo is a truncation of the German word for state secret police. So
Exactly.
that's what it is. It is the Gestapo.
He sees it very clearly because they're behaving like that. And they're the biggest purveyors of criminality and violence and lawlessness, because they're doing this, like attacking these, civilians, smashing into cars. They did that in Massachusetts. That's their
the windows. Yep.
exactly. Forget Miranda rights and forget all that. They're just like, because immigration is under executive plenary power. And they made it so in the period immediately after the fall of Reconstruction. People think, it just kind of affected Black people in the South. But actually, it resulted in all these sort of very racial, nativist immigration laws, whether it was Chinese exclusion, and later on the 24 Act, according to race. Like if you were Northern European, you were the ideal immigrant. If you're Southern or Eastern, you were a lesser white. And then forget about Asians and Africans. And Trump really believes in all that. They talk about the Great Replacement theory. He says the best immigrants are from Norway. That's like the 1924 Immigration Act.
Yeah.
He really wants to reverse our modern democracy back to those very exclusionary times. Except that the president of the United States himself is a robber baron. In those days, the robber barons controlled members of Congress through bribery and the presidency through campaign donations, beginning with McKinley, who is Trump's new favorite president.
Yeah, very similar.
Trump himself is the robber baron, and everyone's willing to pay tribute to him.
And the crypto and all the other ways in which he's been enriching himself and his family over the past 8 months. It really is extraordinary. When you've been speaking, Manisha, I think about, it feels like some sort of really terrible horror movie where the ghosts of the Confederacy or the ghosts of the Ku Klux Klan, are writing again. They're not just writing in human form, but they're, just, with these steeds from hell sort of terrorizing people. And I have to remind myself, as awful as it is, at the end of the day, these are people and they're not superhuman. These are not, certainly Stephen Miller is no superhuman, notwithstanding his aspirations, I suppose, to be that guy. But the fact is that these are human beings who are just captured by greed and anger and stupidity, and they have some levers of power. But as you point out, the die is not cast. The story is not over, where it's hard to see the perspective of where we are in this timeline when it's just been so chaotic and so horrific in so many ways. And it seems like it's getting worse, on a daily, weekly basis, but that's not the end of the story. And, we as a people can take, a variety of actions, nonviolent actions, and coming together and responding to this usurpation. This usurpation of our constitutional system, of our freedoms, and say we reject these assertions of unlimited king-like power. That's the most un-American assertion ever, that a president should pretend to be king or claim plenary king-like powers. That is one of the most un-American things a politician, let alone a president, could embrace.
No, you're reading it wrong, Lisa. The Declaration of Independence is a woke document, and the people that wrote it are woke. The Trumpy people are the people it was written for.
And
the woke people, the
red coats.
The woke people made the king stuff go away, and they have to bring it back. I mean, come on. It's right in Title 10 of the U.S. Code. Come on, now.
It's right in Section 22 of the U.S. Code.
How dare they cancel the British king?
Yes.
We needed they canceled them. It was cancel culture. And,
How dare we? How dare we rebel against the redcoats? Yeah.
It's so okay. So we got 10 minutes left or so. So I want to ask you one more question, Manisha, before we let you go. I'm worried about like what, it's a fuzzy period right now because it's not full born fascism yet, but it's also not whatever it was before. We're clearly in some sort of transition phase. What do you think is like, what's the metric? What is something we should look for that will happen that will make you say, okay, it's over now. We're now officially in this, we're right of boom, as we say.
Right.
The canary in the coal mine is dead. I'm not sure what my own are. Some of your professorial colleagues fleeing for Canada was not really a great thing. I don't think, but I don't think that enough. That's enough. But what do you think we should be on the lookout for?
So I think right now, as you said, the Supreme Court has given Trump royal powers. Like he can do anything in office, and that is protected according to the Supreme Court, which is nonsense. It's not there in our Constitution. So if they continue with this gerrymandering that they have been doing in Texas, Missouri, and Utah, so I believe in Utah it's kind of backfiring because there's some swing districts that might actually flip blue. But it's complicated. You can't predict what's happening in elections. And Newsom is fighting back in California, etc. But I think the canary in the coal mine will be the midterms.
Yeah.
Next year. And it is the 250th of the founding of the Republic. So it's like it's like this historically weighted moment for us. And will the Republic survive? Now, our senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, who I really like, he's
been doing a good job. Yeah.
Fantastic. UConn graduate. Go UConn. He's very loyal to UConn. He has been on fire. And when he, as a senator of the United States, says, I'm not sure whether we'll have free and fair elections in 2026, that freaked me out. I was nervous about it, but, I'm a citizen. Okay, I'm a historian. I'm well informed about politics, but I don't know what's going on in the inner sanctums of the United States government. When he said that, I said, oh my God, this is a possibility. So for me, if the 2026 elections are free and fair, and you can see this rising, not only does the midterm elections always go against, usually in American history, against the people in power, the party in power, but there has been a lot of, falling off of Trump's numbers. No matter he just like Trump saying, oh, I'm doing fantastically. Oh, my numbers are great. No, but he's a congenital liar. But we know that from all the polls, even those by Fox News, that his numbers are down and that they're likely to lose the 2026 midterms if they don't fool around too much with the electoral system. He tried to do that in 2020. He tried everything. Find me 11,000 votes, tampering with this, that, the insurrection itself, January 6th insurrection. So I wouldn't put anything past him. And there's no one in the federal government to check him. And the Republican Party is going to just go along with this. So I think if the 2026 elections are like elections in Viktor Orban's Hungary or Putin's Russia or Erdogan's Turkey, that's the end of the American Republic. And it's not just the fall. That would be the end. That would actually be the end of the American experiment in Republican government, which would be a global tragedy. Can I be like Lincoln and trust ordinary American citizens to prevent that from happening, as they did in the 1850s? I hope so. And I hope we don't have a civil war because he controls the United States government. The other thing that I'm nervous about is, and I'm not a big supporter of the national security state of the United States or American hegemony and all that. I was a critic of the way America conducted the war in Vietnam, for instance, or the made-up war in Iraq. We've done pretty awful things throughout the world. but our enemies couldn't have dreamt up of a better person to destroy the United States. He's destroying our government, destroying our economy for personal gain. He behaves like a Saudi prince, probably. But even Mohammed bin Salman is actually modernizing Saudi Arabia, while all of Trump's plans are actually hurting the United States in ways, self-stabbing, in ways that our enemies couldn't have dreamt of.
I think Putin might have dreamt of it.
Putin,
Yeah,
yeah,
Greg may have a view on this. but-
absolutely. And, clearly there's something there, right? We will, the way the way Barr suppressed the Mueller report, and we know the Russian connections. It's out
Yeah.
there, open to see. And the way he is still, he says he'll talk, he'll say something, but when it comes to doing something, he's still doing what Putin wants him to do. And so maybe he is a Manchurian candidate, come to life or whatever. He's clearly compromised in many ways because he's such a compromised person in many ways. So I don't know. I really don't know. That would be for me. Let's see what happens next year, Greg. And if
Yeah.
I have to seek political asylum in Germany,
I'll be right there with you. Berlin is lovely. Yeah.
No, when I was coming back, I was away over summer. And when I was coming back, I actually had the number of an immigration, and I'm a citizen since Bill Clinton's presidency. But I actually had the number of an immigration lawyer that I gave to my husband. I said, if they stop me for any reason, but I'm too small, right? I occasionally, I'm just a historian. I tweet. I'm not in their sites. I'm not Comey. I'm not Adam Schiff. I'm not Pritzker. I'm not the mayor of Chicago. Those are the big things. But what Orban did was he went out to the big people and then he went down towards all said and weaponized the government, where he took people's property, used the tax system against them. And they will do that because they want to do that. They openly said that. So that would be the end for me. Then we would not have a democratic republic anymore, and certainly the U.S. Constitution would be overthrown. So I'm hoping that does not happen. If we win back the House, and he's desperate because he knows if the Democrats win back the House, they'll impeach him again.
Oh yeah, like day one, I would hope.
I mean, he's done so many impeachable things that you lose count of them.
Yep.
And I think even at this point, if we get the Senate back, the Senate would probably boot him out if it took that long. But at the end of the day, then it depends on people. Even if they gerrymander and all the stuff they're trying to do, if people go out and vote away from the regime party in enough numbers, we'll be okay. If they don't, then we're fucked. That's basically bottom line. That's what I'm hearing.
I think our civil society is still very strong. We are not like Hungary or Turkey that did not have a strong tradition of civil liberties and civil resistance. And we've been through very dark eras, right? The Red Scare, the McCarthy era, etc., and came out of it. So maybe we will, and that would be the hopeful thing. And I think you're right, Greg. The only way to save our democracy right now is, in fact, to boot these guys out of power. We can protest and build that political momentum right now in the streets, in the courts, or whatever other way. But ultimately, we have to throw them out and hold them accountable.
That's the other piece. That's
an opportunity in simply not, getting really acting fast after January 6th and completely implementing the 14th Amendment and forgetting about the Supreme Court and just having Congress and the Biden administration was too timid, too institutional, too scared of looking partisan. The Republicans don't care. And the Democrats are like, oh no, there's a line in the sand here and I can't walk across it. And I think we were too timid because we knew the danger and it's not nipping this poison in the bud. It's simply grown.
Yeah, it's metastasized and
totally. And my only hope is it doesn't, take a huge toll in terms of people's lives, in terms of violence or bloodshed or things like that. That's my only hope.
Yeah, me too. Well, this was great. Let me show your book again. for people that don't know. Rise and Fall of the Second American Republic. This is an excellent book, which I learned an awful lot from. Manisha, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Great to see you as always.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Really nice to meet you, Lisa.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. All right. That's a lot to think about.
It is a lot. And we were at the top of the hour. So I wonder whether we should either.
Well, what is, just tell everybody what Pray Away the Gay is. What do we mean by this? Because this is, it's a short thing anyway. And then we'll,
Yes. Well, this was the topic of the Supreme Court's first week back in session, although it seems as though they never left, since they were issuing reckless emergency order after reckless emergency order to pave the way for Trump to get around really well-reasoned decisions by lower court judges against numerous Trump policies, initiatives, destructive acts. But of course, John Roberts scheduled the hearing on this issue this week to begin this court's term, and all of the cases the court is taking, this Roberts court is taking, they're almost all discretionary. So they chose to take up a case challenging whether Colorado and by proxy other states could ban conversion therapy. Conversion therapy has been found by numerous psychological associations as well as other bodies of governance, namely the United Nations has described how conversion therapy, trying to force people to not be gay, to not be lesbian, to not be themselves, how those practices can amount to torture. And that's because it has been torture, and it is a form of abuse that the state of Colorado has rightly barred. And now this Supreme Court, this Roberts Court, is poised to block that ban and allow conversion therapy to go forward. This is happening, with a court that's already trying to overturn and has overturned other really important legal precedents and laws. But this is just what the John Roberts Court is up to this week. And I listened to part of the oral arguments and the commentators who were inside the court. The takeaway was it's not a matter of if the Supreme Court deems that Colorado cannot ban this torturous conversion therapy. It's a matter of how they're going to block this state law.
Well, that's fun times. It's actually very good news for Mike Johnson. Let's just be fair. Not everything is bad. No, but in all seriousness, they're hateful people. They're hateful people. And I think that's the main takeaway here is that the court, somebody wrote a book about the court in John Roberts. Who was it? It was you. That's the other book that I have here. So what's going on? This is the half now. We're in the half part, which is the part where we talk about something happy. So tell us about it. Your book has been out for a week and a day. So what's it like? What's happening?
Well, I can't believe it. It has been out for a week. It's glad you're counting to the day. I'm in the week. I can't believe it. When the books came to my house, I was just so excited to tear open the box and see it after I've been working on it for so long on my weekends and my summer vacation last year. And so there's been a lot of great coverage. A lot of people have been getting the book and reading it and sharing it. And we've had great excerpts in a number of outlets and did a Q&A with Mother Jones and other places. And I'm so happy to have the chance to get this book out there, because even though it's a book that's very critical of John Roberts and what he's done to our Constitution, the book is really a labor of love about our freedom and why it matters to have a court that is not in the tank for one political party, is not engaging in these hyper partisan rulings to aid a hyper partisan president who's intent on destroying long-standing laws and precedents and traditions and common sense practices. When I think about love, I guess I would pivot back to what you were just saying about conversion therapy. I don't have children, but I believe, as an aunt of many nieces and nephews, that one of the most fundamental obligations of a parent is to love your child, just to love your child unconditionally.
Yep.
And to not try to change them if they're gay or they're lesbian, or if they're like a physicist, or if they're an athlete, or they drum on everything. Like,
only maybe if they're a Nazi, then you
yeah,
can.
well, there is one line that we cannot cross.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of loving your kids and your family and wanting them to be happy, and not trying to impose invented claims from a religious text on them, when you're not following all of them. You're eating shellfish. Hello. You might be wearing a wool and cotton at the same time. You might, all the to pick and choose which of those commandments or dictates you're going to follow, and like ignore the one about embracing the foreigner and feeding the poor, and like,
even though those are the main ones.
Those are the main ones, but
those are the most important ones.
Yeah,
according to some hippie named Jesus.
Yeah, and then one of the ones we've talked about before that I've always thought was really important until this presidency and its previous term was, there was this commandment that was pretty unambiguous. It was, "Thou shalt not lie." Really plain, clear, clear one. But that apparently is not as applicable as some others that some people want to make up and then try to force on their kids, and put them in circumstances where they are tortured and will, face grave emotional harm. And so the book isn't all about that. The book is actually about the array of ways in which John Roberts has sought to impose his own sort of personal and political agenda through the law, pretend that it's neutral, pretend that he's an umpire. I decided after our conversation on Friday that when John Roberts said that he was an umpire just calling balls and strikes, what we know now is he's not an umpire, he's a Trumpire.
There you go.
He's the Trumpire. That's my hashtag. He's a Trumpire. He's basically moved heaven and earth to exonerate Donald Trump, to get him out of his criminal liability, to pave the way for his return to power. And then once in power, has gone out of his way, along with his other fellow Republican appointees, to tear down law after law and rule after rule to allow Donald Trump to do almost anything he wants. And so I think my book is timely. I think what you don't know about John Roberts could hurt you. One of the things, this book rips off the mask, although I think he took the mask off himself last year when he issued that decision on immunity. But really, it's been out there for a long time. He's the man who decimated the Voting Rights Act, the pre-clearance provisions that also helped pave the way for Trump's rise to power by allowing some of these states to make it harder for Americans to vote. But the book is out, and I'm really excited about it. And you all have been so patient in letting me talk about it. But I'm obsessed with trying to protect our freedoms, and my book is an example of my love for the promises of our nation, and the promises that I want our nation to keep. So,
amen. So everybody should go buy it. If you have not done so already. Oh, right. We have to raise a glass. Yes. I forgot about that. That's the best part of the show. Yeah.
I think you have to raise the glass to me. I think it's not polite for me to raise it to myself.
I raise the glass to you. Thank you for writing the book and putting it out in the world. And, F John Roberts, I say. That's it. I'm drinking to that. Screw that guy.
I'm gonna drink to the book being out there and people forming their own well-informed opinion about how John Roberts has been a destructive force on the Supreme Court.
Amen.
All right. So thank you everyone for tuning in this Wednesday night. I hope it's been uplifting in the midst of all the hard topics that we're talking about and that we're all dealing with and seeing and exposed to on a daily basis. And I hope you will tune in next Wednesday again for our 5, 8 and a half. But before then, I hope you will come and join Greg Olear and LB for Friday night, 5/8, the original, the classic.
The OG will be there.
The OG, yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks for the great comments.
Yep.
Thank you. Here so and much. On Substack, both. Appreciate you.
Thank you.